Thanks so much for taking time out to come to this event. I know everybody has very busy lives, work lives and personal lives, so it's really nice that you've prioritised and privileged this really, really important discussion, and you get to hear from an absolutely amazing panel who are going to introduce themselves in a little bit. My name's Lisa Hackett. I'm the Chief Social Worker at Frontline. I've been a social worker since the mid-90s. I started in residential social work, and Leicester City Council is the local authority where I've spent most of my working career. Came to Frontline in 2016, having led university programmes in social work, policing, probation at Leicester University and De Montfort University. So, yeah, a little bit about me. We're not expecting any fires or fire alarms. If we do, you can see that green sort of fire escape sign behind you, thank you. We would exit through there. You hopefully already know, but the toilets are through those doors. Please continue to help yourselves to drinks at the bar, and we have got some more snacks for you if you are partial to deep fried mac and cheese, which seems slightly odd to me, but it's coming again in the break if that's what you want. So there'll be some refreshments for you. The order of tonight looks like this. It's going to be a really, really interesting discussion. It might raise some questions for you. There will be chances for you to ask those questions. If you kind of feel you'd rather write those questions down and put it on a stick-it, staff will come and look for them, Frontline staff, and they can read them out for you. But I'm hoping that we can develop a bit of a culture between us of openness and you feel at ease to ask questions. The panel will be able to tell you if they don't want to answer them. It's as simple as that. I should have said at the beginning, actually, because I've been making a commitment to do this, which I forgot, but I haven't completely forgot because I've just remembered now. My pronouns are she, her. So before we get into the panel discussion, Petra is going to do a little keynote for you to warm us up and talk about her experience in relation to county lines and harms that happen outside of the home. So if you could give you a round of applause, put your hands together for Petra.
Hi, everybody. Is my mic working? Working. Okay. Hi. My name's Petra McDermott, and I currently run a company that offers support to county lines trafficking victims and their families. I also am now a member of Frontline steering group to look at the way the training of new social workers is put together in order to create change. I'm here to share my own personal experiences of social services and how they were involved in my family's life. These experiences are independent of Frontline and aren't affiliated with the work they do. I have since worked with different local authorities in a support and guidance capacity for families who are experiencing difficulties in communicating with their social worker in order to build a relationship that works in the best interest of the family I've been assigned to. I have also attended a few organised sit-downs with Birmingham Children's Trust and other professional members of the community to look at what work needs to be done and how they intend to make changes. Tonight, I'm sharing to set the context for this evening's event. In 2017, my son was removed from my home after making allegations of being abused. Despite having no evidence, he was placed in foster care. Whilst in care, my son came across a group of people who noticed he never had any money and offered him a way to make some. This is how my son became a victim of county lines. The local authority didn't tell me what was happening. They excluded me from meetings and wouldn't tell me anything regarding where my son was. He was moved around a lot, and the situation got so bad that he was eventually stabbed. This is when they decided that he wasn't safe, and they moved him to a secure unit in County Durham without my knowledge or consent. I was then left to pick up the pieces of my son's life after they allowed him to be charged as an adult due to being found in possession of Class A drugs. When people think of county lines, the first train of thought is usually about how traumatic it is for the young person who's being trafficked, the conditions they're kept in, and the heavy responsibility placed upon them. The danger and violence that they encounter daily is usually the thing that is focused on and talked about. Not many people stop to think about the effect that it has on the parents. Tonight, you are all here to understand more about the confusion it causes when you no longer understand the person you gave birth to. The hurt that is felt when you try to talk to them and they push you away, often becoming verbally and sometimes physically abusive. The embarrassment that takes over when you realize it's happening under your nose. And the fact that there was very little you could have done to stop it. Knowing there are people out there that may actually really want to hurt your baby because they want them to do things that are illegal. What people often don't think about is the trauma that creates in a household, how other siblings are affected, the fact that no matter how bad things get, you as a parent have got to keep going because you have other responsibilities. And you know that if those responsibilities slip for just a second, you'll be blamed for what happened. The fact that you are already being blamed and nobody seems to want to help you. They're all judging you because how did this happen if you're such a good parent? Not many people understand what county lines does to a parent, but I do. County lines broke my heart, and even after 5 years, I'm still trying to put it back together. I learned that if you do not know your rights as a parent, you can be iced out of situations where you have parental responsibility. That there are hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who are in the same situation as my son, and as a parent, you can find yourself being blamed by professionals rather than being supported. I do the work that I do because I want things to change. I want young people to have a chance to live a life that doesn't hold them hostage to their past and allows them to become the amazing people they have the potential to be. I want social workers, team leaders, IROs, and managers to be able to spot the signs and take action to protect the young people that truly need protecting. I don't want parents to live in fear of being penalised for not knowing what to do. I want the old-fashioned ways of social work to be eradicated and rewritten to suit the world we live in now. This is why I work with Frontline and other agencies who are providing support to social workers to improve their practice, leadership, and innovation to create better outcomes for children and families. Thankfully, my son Tamar is doing really well. He's put this experience behind him and is now working at Land Rover. He has an amazing 21-month-old son who has definitely been a beacon of light and happiness in our lives. He lives with his girlfriend just outside of Birmingham and is successfully planning the rest of his life. Understandably, there are times when his experience makes him protective of his younger brother, and as a family, we have allowed him to express that we understand there are some things we will never understand about what he experienced, and that's okay. He knows where to find us when he needs us. That we love him and that nobody blames him for what he went through. My boy is happy, and we couldn't be more proud of him.
Oh. Petra, thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot of people in the room will be able to relate to that on lots of different levels. For me as a parent, I was thinking about how you said it broke your heart with your son, and I think that's really, really, it's a powerful thing to get up on stage, talk about, and I really commend you for doing that, because it's not easy. It looks easy, Petra makes it look easy, but it's not easy to do. Yeah, lots of can help, can't it? But yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to ask our other panel members to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Lisa Ann, and then I'm going to hand on to Tyrone, and then Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. There we go, bit of value. My name is Lisa Ann Edwards. I am the founder of the Social Work Coaching Hub, host of Dear Social Worker podcast, and a leadership development coach for Frontline and BASWA. That's it. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you.
That's a lot. Tyrone?
Is this on? Yep. No, I heard it. That's on, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, good evening. My name is Tyrone Haughton. I'm a poet. And I'm also the founder of Literati Arts, which is a poetry organization in Leicester, predominantly and primarily working with children in care and people with care experience.
Hello, hello, oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Wilde. I'm an author and campaigner. 2 books, Damaged and The State of It, which is about my life in care, going back into care as a professional 30 years after I left care and just making those comparisons. I was on the Independent Care Review led by Josh McAllister as a part of the Expert by Experience board. And from that, now I do a lot of consulting work around the country, putting young people at the forefront of those objectives and looking at different pathways to make sure they thrive and they get the right opportunities. So that's what I do. Great to be here today. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris. Petra, is there anything else you want to add as way of introduction? No pressure.
I might as well.
I thought so.
I run an organisation called Young People Like Tay. I work with young people and their families if they're having difficulties communicating with their social worker to ensure that the situation works out in the family's best interests. I also work with an organisation called We Are the Village UK. We do holiday programmes in the holidays to keep the young people off the street. And I am now working with Frontline with regards to their steering group as well.
Great stuff, thank you. So if it wasn't evident before, hopefully it is now. We've got a huge amount of experience, knowledge and expertise with us tonight. So let's make sure we make the most of it. My first question that we've been thinking about, and I wondered, Chris, how you'd feel about answering, starting, if that's okay. So from your experience, what are some of the most effective things you've seen done for children and young people impacted by county lines and extra familiar harm?
I think at the moment, there's a bit of a revolution at the moment. And I said there's a revolution, there's a bit... I think young people in care are becoming kind of familiar with what the care system is. There's a lot of media news about it. And I think coming back from after COVID, I think that really brought county lines and things like that to the surface. And just to elaborate on that, when I talk to people, they explain that to me. I say, well, think about COVID. It's like, you know, the River Thames, there's a drought and all that debris there. And it's a perfect opportunity to kind of clean it up, deal with it. But what we do is we just wait till it rains again and it covers it up. And I think coming from the back of that, I think with stuff like county lines it's become so popular in regards to TV programs and it's become, for me, it's like, it's become like a fashion thing, county lines. We use it as a fashion thing and it's not a fashion thing. And every young people I work with is, you know, they're making references to Top Boy and things like that. And it's like, come on, guys, please. But when you go inside a jail and you go and speak to young people 16 to 18 who have been involved in county lines, you know, myself, I was in a county line as a young person. I was sent all over Yorkshire with bags of drugs and told I had to do this. And if I didn't, grandma was going to get acid in the face. There is a really evil kind of Dickensian theme underneath a county line. And there's nothing fashionable about it at all. But I think young people in particular now, they know, they're not naive, they're not ignorant, they know what's going on in society. They know, but you know, there's a cost of living crisis. They know, but opportunities are just failing and everything's closing down. So right now we've got a huge problem. We've got a pandemic, we've got an endemic, we've got everything going on, and it's really affecting young people. But there's lots happening. I think one of the great things I'm seeing, which is looking at tackling things like this, is but people are more aware of it. That's number one. We know what it is. We're educated. We understand what it is. But I also think, but young people, like, they don't want a life like this anymore. A lot more people could take it to social media saying enough's enough. I don't want to be dragged into the streets, dragged into this way of living, and you know, people ending up dead. So there's a bit of revolution at the moment. You know, it's not like, you know, the care sector right now is in the media eye. There's so much going on after the care review with all these stories in the media, and we've got to keep that up. And that for me it's imperative. It's one of the most important things to tackle stuff like this is, you know, brush it under the carpet, we forget about it. If it's in the media every week, and you know, you've got a lot more famous people coming forward who are defending, you know, this and not treating these young people as criminals. Got to stop saying that as well. It really annoys me. I'm passionate about that. But they're victims. They are vulnerable young people. And then we start changing the lexicon. We start changing that narrative, and we see, but things will change gradually, naturally. geographically, things are getting better.
Thanks, Chris. So something about de-glamorizing it, for want of a better word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not treating the young people involved in it as criminals, understanding that they are operating from a position of being a victim as well, and to keep it alive, keep talking about it. Yeah, okay. Tyrone, I wondered if there's anything from your perspective that you wanted to add into that. 1 second, yeah. You could. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the point. It's not on. I'm a natural projector. Can I speak? Yeah. The point that Chris made about not seeing the young people as criminals but victims is something I think about a lot often as well, because something really effective for myself that I've seen work in my life. Years ago, I was a youth worker, and I dealt with and worked with a lot of young people, thank you, who are part of County Lines. And something that always worked was reminding these young people that they are children, but also reminding teachers and their parents and social workers that these kids are children. My own experience with County Lines is kind of different. And I think this really helped me when I did work with these young people. So I'm dealing with kids who, they don't rate their families, they don't rate their dads or their mums, and someone rolls through their neighborhood with a nice chain, and that's all it takes, or a nice pair of trainers, and it's game over, bamboozled. So I was always explaining to them that this is a dead end. Like, I know this is influential, I know it's sexy, I know it's juicy, but it's quick and it's a dead end. And I could tell them that because my own experience, I was essentially drug trafficked from Jamaica. So I was sent to Jamaica by my mum to live with my auntie. And the agreement was, it happens a lot in the Caribbean where people send over a family member for a child for a better life. So my mum was glamorized by the nice house, the nice neighborhood, England's paved with gold. So I lived in this house, but my auntie was a real big-time drug dealer. Horrible, horrible woman. And the agreement was that I'd be coming back to Jamaica every year for summer, and I'll just stay in England for school or whatever. That never happened. It just didn't happen. It was like, no, Tyrone's here now. He's never going back. And from the age of 4, I was part of this drug operation. So I would go to school, and I really got into it more and more, well, was forced into it more and more as I got a bit older. And when I say older, I'm like 8, 9 years old. And I would go to school, and I always tell people I didn't see myself as having a childhood. So I could never relate to the kids at school, because when I go home, I'm handling guns, Class A drugs, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And on top of that, I'm getting battered, kicked around, slapped up every day. So when I come to school and teachers are telling me about something, or kids are just talking childish things, which I wish I had the opportunity to like engage in, I just wasn't, I was years removed. I was numb. I was just out of it. And it really toys with me mentally, because I remember there was a time, I was a real like bright little, sparky little kid, and that light just went naturally. So in doing youth work and meeting these kids in similar positions to what I was in, I could see that light gone. So reminding them that they're kids, being playful. Like, you're not a super predator or something like that. You're a child, you're 14. And then on top of that, identifying or pinpointing their potential. Doing things with them and going, you know what, like, you're pretty good at skateboarding. We were talking about skateboarding earlier on. You're pretty good at skateboarding. You're really good at darts. We're going to play darts. And it's just building self-esteem in something else that your value, or you could use your mind and your body for something more than being, I guess it's a slave, isn't it, to someone's like ill desires. Yeah, so I think that was truly effective.
Can I just come in there as well, just on that point? I recently spent some time in Cookenwood Jail, and it's jail for 16 to 18-year-old boys, and there's 80 inmates in there at the moment. Of those 80, 30 have committed murder at 16 years old. Of those 30 what have committed murder, half of them have come through the care system. And I'm just going to be short with this because it's such a valid point, Tyrone, what you said is that when I went into that jail, I didn't see a murderer. I didn't see a kid who's in a drug gang and selling drugs. I saw a child. I see a child's eyes, and when that child's in front of me and he's telling me he's not getting out of this jail until he's 32 years old and he's 16 years old, and and it does make me sad. It does make me sad because I'm having this conversation with him and I'm saying, you're just a boy, you're a child, you deserve to live a good life. We failed. It's systemic failure. There's a reason why you're here. Yes, you made a conscious decision to be in that gang, to sell drugs or to stab someone. But at the end of the day, they were born into this world as a baby, an innocent child. And somewhere along the way, that childhood is taken from you. And then that's when you become criminalized and that's when you become a victim. But it was a valid point what you made.
Yeah.
We could go back again.
Go.
Recently, I got in touch. My one of the primary schools that I went to, the head teacher came across like a poetry video online, and she was like, "Oh, Tyrone, blah blah blah," sent me an email. We arranged a coffee, and she was part. So when I went into care, they the day was like a film for me, and both of us have different versions of the same day, but we were both centerpieces in that day. And it was a real chilling moment, and this is the part about not being a child. So I was in year 6, I was 11 years old. How I remember it, me and my friend, not my friend, he was an adversary at school. His name was Jed, didn't like Jed at all, and we got in trouble. And then we both got sent to the head teacher's office, but then Jed was allowed to go. And I was like, well, we done the same thing, and I'm not allowed to go. And I was there forever, all day long. And then my thing to stay in the country and to make it seem as if like my auntie was the only person in the world who could look after me was that my mum is dead. She had a car crash and fell in a gully. A gully is like a open sewage system in Jamaica. So that was my thing. I'll just say that. That was automatic. It wasn't even thinking, mum's dead. No, there's a death certificate as well. And I knew my mum wasn't dead. I would speak to my mum weekly. But outside the home, my mum was dead. So my mum had called Interpol, spoke to my head teacher. Head teacher comes in, she's like, Tyrone, I know your mum's not dead. She's on the phone. And she hands me the phone, and I'm like, it's not my mum. My mum's dead. And she's like, Tyrone, it's all right. This is going to end today. The way you're living right now, people are going to come, they're going to take you away. And I was like, no. And then for the first time, we spoke about it, so that she could see that I thought I was cracking. I thought, oh no, there's emotions now. She's going to realize that she's got me here. She's like, no. It was really scary to see a child be so numb and be so robotic and be so militant in the idea of, no, this is it. I won't break regardless. So she said there were many times she tried to get through to me. Took me in the library, took me here, spoke to me about this. And no matter what, there wasn't an opening in the armor. But the way I remember it was I was welling up because she gave me the phone and my mum was on the phone. And I was like, no, this is not my mum. And she just left the room. She was like, Tyrone, it's fine. I'll just leave the room, let you speak to my mum. I was like, it's not my mum. Knowing full well, I spoke to my mum maybe the day before at home. But having to put on a different character it's a mask, isn't it? Yeah. It's a shield. And I think that's what happens to these young people. These things, metal, hardened iron, cast iron is put on them. Now you look like a stone cold killer when you're not, really. You're a boy, a sweet little boy at that.
For sure. Thank you, Tyrone. I guess for me, I was reflecting when you were talking, there's something in the power of being seen, which is what you're trying to do in your work. And we all want to be seen. We want to be seen for who we are. And I guess also as you were talking, started thinking about the adultification process, particularly of young black boys, and how that happens in terms of criminality, does happen to black women, black people as well, and other people, but specifically our statistics tell us that this is an issue as a result of racial bias and racial policies that disproportionately affects young black men. So yeah, it did make me think about that. Lisa Ann, I wondered if, like, from a social work perspective, some of what's been said resonates in terms of what you think should be good practice in social work, if, you know, there's anything you want to add from that perspective.
Sure. I think a lot of it starts with having a good relationship with the family. When you've got a good relationship with the family and with the child, you're then able to gather the right information, the accurate information. And then that feeds into your assessment. Assessments need to be fair, as we talked about earlier. They need to be fair, they need to be balanced, they need to be holistic, and we need to be doing up-to-date risk assessments that are reflective of what's happening in the child's life. I think one of the things that's missing, and certainly from my experience, is about multi-agency working and the gaps in multi-agency working. People will get around the table, they will have discussions, but sometimes there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what each service provides and what they can bring to that child's plan. And I think it's key that everyone has that basic understanding of what all the professionals do, how they play a part in the child's life, how they play a part in the family's life. The other gap that I think is necessary, Lisa, is the support for parents and the extended families, because they are involved, they are aware of what's happening in some cases, and it's important that they have the emotional support. So I think that's looking at resources, looking at services, and coming back to that relational practice.
Thank you. Petra, I wondered if you wanted to pick up on any of that. I know in your talk you made reference to what you'd like to see from social workers and social work practice. I'm guessing perhaps you didn't get that, just surmising. But yeah, whether there's anything on what Lisa Ann said you want to pick up on.
Pretty much the same thing, just to be aware of what the signs are, and to be aware of the fact that these young people have been hardened. And so even though they're coming across and they've got this attitude, it's generally because they're scared. And a 14-year-old does not, there's no 14-year-old Al Capone. It is impossible. There is always somebody else there, and it doesn't matter how many times they say it's not me, it's just me, there's nobody else. There has got to be somebody else there. I think that we need to look at the fact that there are people out there that are preying on these young people, knowing what their circumstances are, knowing that they get into trouble, knowing that the school are probably sick of them, knowing that their parents can't manage them. And as a result, these young people are just out on the street because nobody knows what to do with them. And once they get picked up, they don't get put back down.
Just to add to that, I think it's key as a result of that and being on the other end of when we do become aware of it, is using and making use of trauma-informed practice. I think it's fundamental when you've got that relationship with the family, and even when you're in the process of building that relationship, having a trauma-informed approach is key to be able to actually continue with those relationships, particularly with parents, because parents are the ones with the main responsibility, and they are the ones that are also making sure that the child's coming in at night and trying to make sure that they're safe. So we need to ensure that we are using trauma-informed practice so we can maintain those relationships.
Thank you. On that theme of trauma-informed practice, how does that work, do you think, with working multi-agency? So, for example, with police, teachers, probation, youth workers. And Chris, I wondered if you had any thoughts on how we can be more effective in a multi-agency approach, given the different disciplines that,
Yeah.
and I guess the ways in which those different organisations are operating in terms of priorities.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think like now where I live in Enfield, it's kind of like what we're trying to do at the moment is try a new pilot scheme. So what that means is we all work under the same umbrella, so it's a co-production. So that means what was happening was if a young person was getting picked up by the police and that young person was saying, oh, I'm a looked after child, then the police go, well, that's the social worker's problem, that's the local authority's problem. But it's not, as you know. It's everybody's accountable. And I think one of the recommendations from the independent care review was to extend corporate parenting, so it takes a lot of pressure off local authority, where multi-agencies are all accountable for that young person. That's the NHS, that's the school, that's the police, everybody within a community. So we're doing that right now in Enfield, North London. So we've got this co-production, it's led by the NHS, so that means young people who come through the system, we can get them into therapy quite quickly. We can get other resources if we can't get, like if local authorities are too busy, they're understaffed, they're inundated with young people, but we can get charities like mine, the Children's Society, everybody within the community to step up and come in and help that young person. And again, it goes back to that very cliche saying, but I love it and I use it all the time, it takes a village, and it really does. It really does take a village. And what you see from that is once you work together and you have a rapport, you have a contingency plan with everybody within those multi-agencies, you see that child thrive. And we're doing that already. We're seeing when that young person gets into some kind of therapy quite quickly, we recognize there's a trauma there, we recognize there's a problem, we're working together, right, let's get this child into some therapy really quick, let's get this child onto a program, onto a pathway really quick, because if you don't, again, I use myself as an example, and as Tyrone said, is everything I do is from my own experience. I've been expelled from school 5 times, getting picked up by older gang members, and getting dragged into that false sense of security and not being able to get out. But I was, a typical vulnerable child. And even if you told a teacher, that teacher wasn't having a conversation with a local authority. That local authority wasn't having a conversation with people within the community who knew me. But when you bring everybody together, and it works. I can't stress how much this works. But you see that young person thrive. And you can't save them all, and that's a fact, you can't. But what you can do is you can plant the seed, and once these other young boys within that community start to see another young person do quite well, they latch onto it. They think, well, hang on a minute, I won't mind some of that as well. So it's working, and that money, we always go back to resources, and central government provide a lot of those funds. But when you work as a multi-agency as well, a lot of these charity groups have a pot of money for things like this as well, so we can all contribute if that child needs a safety net around them quickly, and there's no resources there. The school might have a bit of extra funds. We'll say, well, actually, we've got some funds available for that child. We can send him off onto respite or onto one of these summer activities, to stop that person from being groomed into some kind of criminal organization. So going forward, multi-agency work is key. It really is key. Put that net around that child, work together in the community, under the same umbrella, co-production, and see the results. Everybody in this room does this job, not because they want to be millionaires, because you ain't going to get rich, but because we want to see young people do well. We want to put back into the community. I'm raising children in that community. I want my young people, my children in particular, to go out there and be safe, but to have that knowledge, but there is support. And once you start putting it out there, but there is support, they will listen, a lot of these boys. I work with a lot of really hardcore gang boys who were the most respectful young men I've ever met in my life. And I was just saying, I go home to 2 kids, one's 10, one's 2, and I'm stressed. So stressed. But when I go into these environments with these boys, I actually sit there, I'm quite profound. They're so articulate, they're so intelligent, and they're so open and honest. And it's having that discussion as well. I don't sit there with a tick box going, I respect people. I respect everybody I work with. I have a conversation, and I let them lead it. I think the mistakes we do make a lot of the time is we're very focused on regulation, and it's got to be led by regulation. But if you put that to one side and let that young person lead their own pathway, you'll get some good results. So I'll stop there because I'll talk for England. But on that note, I think if it's working in London, in North London, which we have a really big problem with knife crime and drugs, if it's working there, it's going to work everywhere.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris.
May I?
Yep.
From a social work perspective, and I didn't say I'm a registered social worker, over a decade experience from social worker to team manager. So just to add to that point, the multi-agency approach, I definitely agree with that. Having partnership working, letting the child lead, all of those elements are what we would say in social work, the ideal approach, right? And you do set out to do that. However, with the crisis intervention and staffing issues, resources changing and fluctuating, it will be remiss of me not to say you won't face those challenges as you're attempting to do that co-production approach. So that intention is always there. That's everyone's intention. But the reality of that coming to fruition is, frankly, sorry to say, a rarity. And that's something we have to work on. We have to work on trying to pull that together. In the midst of that, I want to make sure I add, it's key that social workers have an understanding of their authority and their leadership power within that dynamic. They're leading a meeting if it's a local authority leading the meeting. So making sure that you're clear on what you expect of your professionals that are working around the table with you, making sure you're clear on what the plan is, making sure you're clear on what your managers advise you to do. All of these elements are key in social work practice. I know Chris is very much focused on the relational side of things, which forms part of what we do. But the other element that I want to add is the bureaucracy. And I know everyone will nod and go, mm-hmm. You mentioned the word tick box. I thought, yeah, I can see that assessment now, that child exploitation assessment, and you're ticking all these boxes. That is a necessary part of, what we do. And admittedly, it can take over. It's not the intention, but it can take over. And that's because there's deadlines to meet. The system's giving you alerts that you need to update your risk assessment and all of these elements that form part of the social work practice that we do. So it's being mindful of the contributing factors that make up the bigger picture of the intervention that's required for the young person. And I'll leave it there because I can go into.
I was going to say that situation that you just explained, I'm aware of it, but I think that is part of the problem because of the deadlines, because of the checklist, because of the alerts. All these young people are being treated the same, and they're not the same. All the circumstances are different, and because everything is so regimented within social work, this is where the net slips. And I understand that you've got your manager that's breathing down your neck, and you've got a pile of paperwork that's this high. And Mandy Hope explained it to me that social workers are under pressure, and I get it, but babies are dying because of this. Yeah. And you cannot turn around to a parent and say, your child is dead because my workload is high and I had a checklist that I had to follow. That's not going to come.
I see that. Sorry, Chris, I have to respond. I see that. I absolutely get that. But there's an element that, for me, I disagree to a point, because there's not many social workers out there that will prioritize bureaucracy over being out there and doing what they need to do and deal with the manager later, so to speak. But there is always a conflict, and there's always a decision that a social worker has to make to complete a piece of work, written work, or go and see this child. But there's no social worker I've certainly come across who would not prioritize crisis intervention and being out there. But the framework of what you're saying is absolutely spot on. It's necessary for that work to be done. There is pressure for that work to be completed. If it's not done, then we don't have an accurate, up-to-date picture of a risk assessment for the child, and therefore the right intervention may not be offered at the right time. So there is a reason for it, but I cannot disagree with the fact that the bureaucracy does take over.
Can I just come in as well? I'm probably going to say something you might not agree with, but when I was a child in care, I had a social worker, and she had 3 young people, and we would go karting, we'd go to restaurants, we'd do good things. And now it's very much a data analysis job, because I work within the local authority as well, so I see it. I get social workers contact me every week saying, I can't do this anymore, I didn't get into this job to be sat behind a desk all day looking at paperwork. But I'm going to say something, and it might be quite controversial, so I do apologise, but I think how the system works, how social system works, it's so archaic, it's so old. It's like, I see social workers now doing stuff they did to me 30 years ago. I'm like, come on now, it's changed a little bit. And it's not the social work. I really feel sorry for social workers. I champion social workers because they're bloody good at their job and they take on a lot of stress. But I think overall, and being involved in the care review, I think that was one of the things I used to say to Josh McAllister all the time. I said, Josh, just look at the paperwork today. It's exactly the same as it was 30 years ago. It's the same scenario, the same kind of, deadlines, the same kind of outlook. You're not going to get anything different unless you change the system. And that's what the revolution is about the care review, about new recommendations is, so get social workers back on the streets again, what they love doing. And every kid I've worked with who's succeeded, who's flourished, he's turned around and said to me, I had a great social worker. I had a social worker who stuck with me, believed in me. So it works. It works.
I do agree. Going to add, sorry. Just have to add. Yeah, completely agree. Absolutely, it does work. And as you're talking, I'm remembering young boys I used to work with, and I would take them to Nando's, we'd go to McDonald's, and we, just to get them away, have that relationship-based practice. But I would get it in the neck when I got back to the office, because now my risk assessment's out of date. Now I need to do this. Now I need to do that. But that was the priority at the time, in terms of us making sure that we're changing the system. The work that you're doing, which I'm sure you'll touch on to let people know, but the work that you're doing is intrinsic to what needs to happen, because the system is like an ecological model, right? So we have the political system, then you've got the system within the system. Each local authority has their own ecosystem, their own culture, their own way of doing things. There's some teams that have, some local authorities that have child exploitation teams, some don't. There's some that have this team, some don't. There's some that have children in care teams that are just for, 0 to 5, and some don't. So those disparities, it's those systems that we need to iron out. But then we have to be mindful, what Petra was saying is kind of a one-size-fits-all. So there needs to be a multifaceted approach to the way that we do make these changes and we do implement them, because each local authority faces different challenges for various reasons, whether it's inner city to being out in the shires. There's different challenges that they face. But I think we all have a responsibility to add our voice to that. And someone will have the responsibility of consolidating and amalgamating all these ideas and putting them together so we can actually have an approach which is effective.
Yeah, thank you. Really, really important. Can you all hear me still on this mic? Really important to tune into that discussion, and it made me think around how we manage multiple truths, because all of these perspectives are true to the person who's experienced them. And I think that's really important. It's not about one being more valid or one being right over the other. It's that there are some real challenges at both ends of the system and in the middle of the system. And I guess what we've not touched on, which I was thinking about also as you were talking, and Tyrone, I wondered whether you had a view on it, is around the cost of living crisis and the impact that's had. And that links to kind of the wider political context that Leicestershire started to, or alluded to in some of the bits she said. And I guess I was thinking, Tyrone, from your experience as a younger person, to younger people now who are being kind of groomed and pulled into that lifestyle, do you think the cost of living and the sort of context in which people are living, particularly poor families, has had a significant impact?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I noticed in young people, young boys especially, is this way of taking on responsibility. I feel like I do know where it comes from. I feel like, I don't want to say peer pressure, but it really is peer pressure. Or there needs to be like a new term for the pressure that you get from social media and seeing so many millionaires are children now. When I was younger, I thought, wow, when you're 18, I used to look at like Rachel Stevens and X Club 7 and think, these people are like the pinnacle of the world. When you get to 18, you're an adult, and then 24, time to retire. I thought that's how it works. And then you get older and you realize it's not. But no one my age had money. It wasn't a thing. But now on social media, you see people driving these like ridiculous cars, and you check, they're like 17. These people have these mansions, they're 13. So the pressure, I feel like young people, especially poor young people grown up with, they look around, they go, whoa, look at my little siblings, look at my family, we're all poor. And I think when I was younger as well, I don't know if it was the same, I feel like it might have been the same for you guys as well. When you were younger, you didn't really realize if you were rich or poor, or you couldn't tell who around had money or how far away you were from that. But now it's so obvious. It's so evident where you stand, and young people, young boys go, I'm not going to stand for this. There's a lot of pride. I need to go out and get it, because they go to school now, and another thing, I do assemblies. And I sit in there, I get there a bit early, and I'm waiting for the kids to come in. I look around, everyone's wearing Air Forces, everyone's wearing trainers. I'm like, what happened to shoes? No one wears school shoes. And the teachers told me, one school said, 1 year everyone just came back in trainers, and we actually couldn't really stop them. We just make them black. But these are £140 pair of trainers.
Yep.
And black Air Force Ones are the standard school shoes. I was wearing Clarks or George. Like, you just...
Plimsolls.
You just wear shoes. You just wear shoes.
Everyone used to think I was a martial arts expert because I wore plimsolls all the time, like Bruce Lee. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just poor.
And when you started rebelling, you wore like K-Swiss or Reebok Classics or Stan Smiths.
Yep.
But now, kids are wearing £175 for a pair of trainers. But because most of us have got it, you better get it. But your family doesn't have any means to get it.
You know, on that as well with the cost of living thing, Tyrone, is like, I see a flip side to that as well, where it's like, it's not about what kids have got, all this media. I mean, that adds to it as well, but it's kind of like, as we were saying earlier, I managed to send them independent houses, and just seeing how many are closing down because of cost of living, like they can't pay the gas bill, the electric, they can't get the money they want in when they're sending referrals out. And that just puts that young person out on the streets as well. Then they're more prone to kind of, I guess kind of gravitate towards that. You know, you want it because it's gone from you, it's taken from you. You know, and you made a valid point earlier. I just want to bring it back up because it's such an important conversation. Is like, I used to work in a house, and this kid walked up one day with a massive pizza, just a pizza, and he says to one of the boys, "Keep the change." But that £8 are like £8 million to him. You know, he was like, "Wow, look at that." And if that one kid in that house has got like them trainers you're describing, which my little girl's got now, which I'm still paying for, it's extortionate. But it's like, you can see how it just kind of, it's a domino effect, and it has such an impact on you. And going back to where you started is that I'm making a kind of a campaign at the moment to go back to, like ITV and people, and just tell them to stop glamorizing it. Please stop glamorizing it, because people are dying, as you said. They are dying trying to get those night trainers. They're ruining their lives trying to get a pair of bloody trainers, get an education. But you can't tell them that.
Yeah.
There's an element here. Sorry, there's an element here about culture, and it would be remiss to leave that out, because particularly with young people in the past and even now, but even more so because you've got social media and that comparison's being made, but having a culturally competent assessment and being aware of the culture of the family, the children and family that you're working with, and the systems within that culture is going to be key to you understanding what that children and family need, and also how you relate to them. So I just wanted to bring that up because Air Force Ones predominantly run in particular cultures as well. So that there's that element that I think is part of this discussion.
I don't know. Sorry. I have a 15-year-old, and you're absolutely right. Air Forces, and if you crease them, you might as well put them in the bin. They have to look brand spanking new. But it's not just it's not just Air Forces. It's things like those is it Canada Goose, the fake Canada Goose? So they've got these Zavzetti coats that cost £300, and it's just like, that's my shopping for 2 weeks. That's my food shopping for 2 weeks, and it's a coat that you want me to buy so that your friend can pull the sleeve and tear it, and then you look like homeless. I'm not doing that. And it goes back to what you said. They've seen these young people walking around, and they've got these Air Forces. They've got, somehow they've got a YSL jumper on. Somehow they've got a Louis Vuitton or a Prada bag. And most of the time it's fake. But they don't know this. And how are they going to get it? Because their mum either can't afford it or she's refusing to buy it. And so they find themselves in this situation where it's like, I've got to get it. And if I don't get it, they won't talk to me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's peer groups and wanting friendships and wanting to fit in. It's really sad because it wasn't like that back in the day.
Yeah.
It really wasn't.
Where's that coming from,
That's
though?
all deeper than
TV
that.
Yeah.
and social media
And drill music.
and the Kardashians.
I think deep in that,
Sorry,
it's about esteem. I think truly what people are chasing is, as you said, status and self-esteem, because that's what you feel. They're all
Sense of belonging.
symbols. Because no one's chasing a mortgage, no one's chasing like investments. When I was working with these kids, I would always tell them it's a dead end. Like, you're gonna do all of this, you get paid in cash. What can you do with cash? Like, you're gonna buy auto trader cars, you're gonna buy trainers, you're gonna buy clothes, and then we're done. Like, you can't really. So, no, I'm gonna get a G-Wagon. So 140 grand. What? How many bags of cash are you gonna carry to Mercedes-Benz? It's not really, think about it. You can't put that anywhere. You can't do anything.
But their mentality is so warped that they want a G-Wagon, but they live in a high-rise flat in Newtown.
But I think that raises another question, though, doesn't it? And it's interesting because, Petra, you framed it as mentality, and Tyrone, you mentioned esteem, and I think that, yeah, how much of mentality, or perceptually having a bad or good mentality, for me, it's linked up with esteem, it's linked up with worth, it's linked up with how you're viewed, how you think you need to be viewed, and how you gain acceptance. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that, because these are young people, they belong to us, they belong to our communities, and this isn't coming from a place of... they're not Machiavellian. These are, someone said earlier, these young people aren't born in a way that wants them to go and buy a G-Wagon with 150 grand. They're just not. So it's about working out what the root of that is. And I don't know whether you'd wanted to add something, Tyrone, to that, and then Lisa.
Thank you. I think there was a change in society where we started. It used to be when we admired people, it's because they've performed some excellence in their field, and it had to be that, and that was it, and it's been running forever, and then it changed, until now it's likes. So young people you'd be cool if you were good at football, you'd be cool if you were good at a certain sport, even if it was judo, like something that no one really does, but wow, you're good at judo, that's the judo girl, cool, and that's how you kind of that's how we used to do it at school. Or you've got this thing that you do, that's, and it was never about what you had on, how much money your parents had, what kind of house you lived in. It was just simply oh, you've got the nice Beyblade. You've got the Beyblade arena or something. And then it changed to just be who's got more clout, who's got more likes. And that's something that's not within, it's external. So people want to be perceived before they're known, So it's all of my worth is in my perception, as opposed to truly what I can do and who I am and my thoughts, my opinions on things. It's just without me speaking, you know what it is, and go, oh yeah, I rate that, I respect that. But young people are not investigating and questioning what is it that you respect. With youth club, all the time. All right, you put on the music. All right, cool. It's like UK drill, and I'm watching these videos, and then they make me feel old, which I really hate, because when I was younger, I would listen to hip-hop all the time. Older people go, oh man, you can't listen to that. Look what they're saying. But now, I listen to this music, and I'm like, you can't listen to, that's not music. And it's just, but I know full well that what I listen to is not at the level that it's at now. These people are just rapping off their rap sheet of I killed this person here. It was like this many stabs over a beat, and that's not music. And I'm like, okay, what do you like about this? Oh, it's got a Versace jumper. Okay, but outside of that, what do you like about it? Oh, he's got this. Okay. What about the music? Let's turn the TV off. We'll play it on Spotify. What about the music? What do you? Oh, there isn't anything. You see someone who's also poor, but they're admired because they've got millions of views or something. But the backdrop looks like your backdrop. So you feel like, oh, if they can come from these kind of like estates as me, and this is what they can get, I can also get that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Lisa Ann.
Sure, thank you. Attachment theory. I know you're going to be like, oh my God, we've done attachment theory
Love
to a
attachment
death.
theory.
Ah! But from the social work perspective, an assessment's perspective, that's what we would need to be reflecting on. So when you're looking at esteem, when you're looking at status, when you're looking at mentality, all of those elements need to be considered in your assessment, and you need to be including attachment theory and trauma-informed practice as well as those. So it's all encompassing, but that's something that came to mind when you mentioned those elements. We have to know our young people and know them well, and a good place to start is looking at attachment theory. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Ann. I was also thinking around, and it's been touched on in some of the conversations, but being intentional about intersectionality and how we see the whole person and the whole bits, the bits that make them the whole and their family, and how we relate to that, how we understand them. I touched on it before about the adultification process, about racial bias. Gender is another factor in county lines in terms of how young people are treated. I just wondered if you'd got any thoughts or experience or, advice to give us in terms of how to take an intersectional approach, how to see all aspects of young people and not get into biasing certain things that we privilege, that are like us, that we think is the norm because it reminds us of us or doesn't.
There's one element I'd like to raise on that, and it's also when you're working in a multi-agency way, what are the multi-agencies' understanding of intersectionality? Because as the social worker, there is somewhat a pressure, an unspoken pressure to be sharing a lot of this information with multi-agencies as well. So I just wanted to add that element and bring that to the conversation that maybe Chris can elaborate on. But I just wanted to add that. I know this is your question, Chris, so I'll let you crack on.
I'm thinking, is that my question? I'm not sure. How am I going to answer
I think we've
that?
gone off script anyway, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
I don't. You know what? I'm kind of privileged that I've been able to be kind of rebellious in my work. I didn't go down the path of being a social worker. I didn't go down the path as being anything really. I kind of just said to myself one day, I'm going to be a campaigner. I'm going to go out there and champion young people. I'm going to be the voice of reason kind of thing. And I travel the country up and down geographically, and I go to Liverpool and I see a lot of young people who are very poor. I see a lot of young people who are extremely poor, and they've got the same outcomes as people who come from London and stuff like that. But what I've seen recently as well, I went to a school in Bradford, quite a privileged school, and a lot of these kids were coming up to me saying, I might not have been in care, but my dad paid for me to be abused. My dad paid for me to be forced onto the streets. My dad's kind of paid for me to do that. And it got me thinking about how we kind of, you talk about bias and you talk about public perception and you talk about the stigma attached to young people who are in jail or young people who come from these deprived areas. But I think right now, across the country, everybody's suffering, a lot of young people are suffering. And it's not, I get kind of argumentative when I go to conferences or parliament and they try and blame it all on deprivation and poverty and these parents are not doing this. And I said, no, stop, it's not about that. We've gone beyond that now. We've gone well beyond that now. We've gone to the point where every young kid is a victim, every young kid is vulnerable, every young kid, is not safe. And we've got to kind of bring it all together. And I think it's important. I speak to a lot of social workers and, getting their feedback on that as well. And they're saying to me, we're going to a lot of houses now where you wouldn't think a social worker would go to. And that's scary for me. It's scary for me. It's scary because, I'm trying to be an advocate for care leavers, for young people in care, but I've got to be the voice for everyone as well, because you can't forget about that group which goes unseen. And, this is, I'm coming off script now, but, I started a campaign with a guy called Terry Galloway a few months ago to make care experience a protected characteristic, because we talk about, the BAME community, LGBT and everything. That group of people in particular tick every box, and that they have been kind of discriminated against for many years from everybody, from professionals, from social groups. And it's something I'm passionate about. We've got 29 local authorities who've passed motion to make it a protected characteristic, but I think it will make a difference in how we work, in our professional practice as well.
Thank you, Chris. Frontline would definitely want to get behind that campaign any way that we can. It'd be great to talk to you in more detail about that. I met some young people at an event in Newcastle when we did the first part of the exchange who spoke about what they're worrying about at this point, and that is money that they had for activities being spent on food in the care home, it going back into petty cash, about they can't concentrate on their GCSEs because they're worried that what's going to happen when they have to leave. They don't think they can survive financially. There's no support. Zari, they had gone to university, which is a feat in and of itself, and then they found themselves homeless because there was no family for them to go back to. And it's, you know, we forget that. We forget some of these very, very real stories. So, yeah, it'd be good to connect a bit more about that. What a panel. Don't think they needed me here, but yeah, it's been a privilege to have you and listen to you. I think we've got some time for some questions from the floor. If there's any, there's no pressure. You can...
Pressure.
Oh, there is pressure. There's lots of pressure. But yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh yeah, working. My name's Monique. I'm working for the local authority in Manchester. I'm a complex safeguarding social worker, so I specialise in exploitation and serious youth violence. Thank you everyone for the perspectives today. It's been really interesting. What I would say, again, with the capacity, Lisa, I agree. In Manchester, there's 5 social workers covering exploitation. And there's a demand for making sure that your assessments are done within time scale, and so you don't end up having the capacity to do the work that you want to do with children and young people. I find myself a lot firefighting and trying to do crisis intervention in the daytime, but then I'm doing assessments at night time, and then it really affects my personal work-life balance, and it's not sustainable. So I just want to kind of put that out there. One of the questions that I want to ask is around kind of extrafamilial harm. What I'm finding is I've got children and young people that are being criminally exploited or exploited in county lines and obviously selling drugs, and they've come from like a lineage of where families have been gang members. So it's been very difficult to try and break them away from that when it's all they know and that's part of their sense of belonging and identity. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how would you work with a child or young person where a lot of their family are involved in gangs, and you know, I don't want to send them away, because a lot of the times that's to say, oh, well, we'll send them away to a different city, but I think then if they're the victim, why should they be sent away? You know, it's almost like they're being punished. So just any advice around that really would be helpful.
Tyrone, I think that's your lead, isn't it?
You think? Okay. Thank you for the question. It's tough. I can say so personally for my own lineage as well. Just from a family of just bad breed people, just never like tried to do anything positive. I'll go down this route and then I'll try and answer your question. For me, I don't like that word, resilient. My resistance, I don't like resilience for a reason, but anyway, I'll talk about it. But my resistance to that on a personal level was watching, my daily life was, I'd watch addicts do what they do. I'd see the way they were treated by the dealers who are my family. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be treated like that. But also don't want to do that to people as well. And I'll be right in the middle of everything. I hate the smell of it all. I'd hate the skin. I'd hate everything about the burning of like heroin or whatever. It's just a nasty thing to be around. So I was always like really like grossed out by it all. then I'd watch just how dead end it was, or it was like, okay, you've got an R1, a motorbike, okay, and now that's been taken off you. Now you've got an Audi TT, okay, now that's been taken off you, and it's like, okay, there's really nothing coming from this. So for me, it was always, no matter what, and plus I was being abused as well, so no matter what, I don't ever want to be like these people. Like, there's, no matter what. But I guess a bit more apt to what you're saying, when children are coming from a lineage of this, it's like, the biggest thing is the fear. And whenever you step that, and now you've got a family culture as well. And stepping outside of a culture, no matter what it is the most difficult thing. It requires you to be beyond brave. It's actually quite reckless sometimes, especially in that circumstance, when you're stepping out of a family line, a family culture of we do this thing, and you taking a stance against it tells us exactly what you think of us, but then makes you the opposition instantly. And that is fatal. Yes. Truly, like a genuine life and death situation. So getting through to young people, I want you to jump in. Getting through to young people like that.
And do you know what? And I work with young people who come from Albania, so they were forced into gangs in Albania, then were sent to London to sell cocaine, and then you work with these kids, and it goes back. You know, that's all they've ever known. You know, they've got a corrupt government. They've got, you know, the mafia run Albania, and their dads and their brothers, and they've been working on farms, and they come here, and you've got to sit down with them and say, have you thought about an apprenticeship? You know, it is, you know, and it's hard, but you know, it's difficult as a professional, and I struggle with it. I go home to my own kids and I think, God, you know, can I do more? What can I do for this kid? I'm sure I can do something. And do you know what it is? It's same with me. The only thing you can do is plant a seed. You know, I work with a lot of kids who hate their dads, because their dad was violent, the dad was a drug dealer, the dad, you know, the kid was always looking over the shoulder because the dad was a gangster. And you've got to sometimes pick out those elements and use that as a tool when you're working with these kids as well. And unfortunately, it's hard to break the cycle. You can't break that cycle until, you know, I get a lot of young people go to jail and they're in Pentonville and they're writing to me and say, Chris, you were right, Chris. I can't live this life anymore, Chris. Or something bad happens in jail, which it does still happen, regardless of, you know, things do happen in jail. A lot of rape happens in jail still, and because they don't have, again, goes back to prison wardens, and there's not enough of them. I was in Moorlands recently, and a lot of things happen there, and these boys are scared, and they want to come out of jail, and they're begging to take your phone number so they can get a job and start. But as a social worker, as somebody who's, I mean, it sounds like you've got it, and I know the mayor of Manchester. I work with her, Donna, and Lem Sisses from Manchester, and, you know, they've got a kind of an investment in that as well, because those are the ones we need to be working on. Those are the priority group, as I call them, because we've got to protect them, but it's hard, isn't it, to break them away from that cycle. I don't have a definitive answer, and all I would say to that is you just got to plant the seed and hope one day, but that kid comes to you and says, thank you for changing my life, thank you for just planting that seed and showing me the light, and they do. This job, there's no gratification overnight. I had a kid recently, a girl who I was working with at 15 in a children's home. Everybody hated her. She'd bite people, she'd spit at you, and it was, you know, and I was her key worker, and I couldn't, you know, she was out doing drugs and grooming all the other young girls. You know, there were pedophiles involved and stuff. And I got a, you know, I never gave up on that girl, and she was from a really kind of evil family, which made her do really bad stuff, and they did bad stuff to her. And I just remember planting the seed all the time, planting the seed. I got a text message on Facebook, and she sent me a picture of her in a suit, and I thought she was in court or something. I'm like, oh, what have you done? She went, no. She said, I'm now working for the famous children's hospital in London. I'm a key worker. And she said, thank you for never giving up on me. And I was like, oh, wow. And I can't tell you, she was spitting in my face, telling me to F off, and she left the care home at 16, went into a semi-independent home. She was on the street selling her body. She was doing all these kind of iniquities because that's all she's ever known is evil. But once she just remembered that, and that's what keeps me going in this job is you get with that one person, you think, yeah, that's why we do it. So you plant the seed, keep doing what you're doing. Because it sounds like you're doing an amazing job, by the way.
It's hard.
I was going to say, sorry. when you encounter situations like that, a lot of the time, the parents of the child who is finding themselves in problems isn't able to break away from their actual family members. And I think it's about focusing on the parents. Are they actually in the frame of mind where they are willing to step away from their family in order to protect their child? Or is it a matter where the child does have to be removed from them? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to a point where they have to make a decision with regards to their child or being loyal to their family. And for some people, that is dangerous in the sense that these people will treat you like strangers if you betray them. But at the same time, are you willing to allow your child to be out on the street and do these things that can land them in prison or they wind up dead? Or, it's focusing on the parents and the way the parents are dealing with the situation. Are the parents a hindrance in this situation, or are they helpful? And if they want to help themselves and their child, they will work with you in order to get out of this situation. If not, then you unfortunately have to go down the other route.
Thank you.
Going to offer another perspective, if that's okay. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the order, but there is an order that you can request from the court that can create some form of safety and protection for the child and the parents. So I've worked with a young boy, and when I picked up the family, this young boy was in a residential in Timbuktu where there was no other children around. There was just nothing. It was in the countryside. That was a deliberate choice to keep him safe because essentially, similar to what we've all said, the family was pulling him into a lot of criminal exploitation, drug trafficking, etc., etc. And when I walked into it, I can't remember the name of the order, but there is an order that was in place to support actually rehabilitating the family relationships. But there was a very clear, we're not allowing you to have this contact with them physically, but on the phone, supervise, etc., etc. But that was the absolute extreme that I've ever seen happen when it's familial harm that's happening.
Thank you.
Is it working? I might just shout. Just want to say thank you, all of you. Really powerful, and I've learned so much already just sitting here. Just introduction, I'm Sarah, so I'm a leaving care team leader in Coventry. Worked in care leaver teams for 15 years, also care experienced as well. So just not really kind of questions, more reflections that I've thought about in terms of my practice, and maybe to share with the rest of the audience. In terms of touching on kind of the victim, I'm thinking more around practice about challenging more. I'm thinking of the pre-sentencing reports and using the Section 75 defence as social workers. We could be kind of advocating for that and reading those reports. And I don't know whether, Chris, in your work and campaign, whether you can kind of do some dip sampling and go out and speak to judges about actually their understanding of county lines, so that I'm not saying that we should be, just touching on what you said about prisons and the amount of young people, whether or not it's not about them getting away with what they've done, because obviously they've committed murder and things like that, but actually could we look at other mechanisms or other consequences than that?
On that note, I'll be very quick because I know we're short of time, but it costs £250,000 a year to put somebody in Pentonville or Cookham, £250,000 for one inmate. So when you're in court and you're talking to the judge, I say this as well, you can spend £250 of taxpayers' money, or we can invest 50 grand in a nice program which will make sure that kid doesn't go to jail. And that is a conversation happening, but I definitely will kind of work on that as well.
And again, just another point, not everyone has a family. I think as well, linking kind of identity and maybe rejection. So when we're talking about what the pull factors are, why they want those trainers and things like that, I was just thinking very much kind of, from my own experience, I guess, you feel rejection if you're in care. And then just, Chris, touching on what you said about trauma, I guess my experience is very much I want to get that trauma informed straight away. Not every young person is in that right place for trauma at that specific time. Just from my own experiences, being very proactive doesn't always work. So I just suppose those are some of the key points. But, you know, thank you all of you. Really, really learnt a lot. So thank you.
I can add something to that. So if a young child is not ready for trauma-informed practice, perhaps attachment-informed practice may be a gentler way to approach it.
Yeah.
I think there's we need to myth bust a little bit around that. To be trauma informed is to be sensitive to knowing what trauma has in terms of the impact on the individual, and then we consider how we approach that individual in our everyday interactions. So it doesn't have to be about entering into therapy. It's about recognising what the need of that young person is, or how that trauma is presenting in that individual, to adapt your own practice to be able then to care for that young person.
Yeah, exactly. It's about basically prioritising their well-being and emotional health with consideration to what they've experienced. So yeah, absolutely. That does not mean therapy. That it can be just social work practice, but it can mean therapy too, of course. Yeah.
Leicestershire, have I said that properly?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, good. I just wondered how, you touched on it before, how you deal with multi-agencies who perhaps are not coming from the same place ideologically as you. So we're talking about trauma informed, we have restorative practice, we have systemic practice, but your head teacher or your, leader of whatever hasn't got a clue. And there's a way that they've been doing things for years, and that's the way, so that depending on how you approach it, you just seem like the weird one in the room, or, some sort of, what did I say to you earlier? Interloper. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. It's a really good question, really good question. It links back to something I mentioned earlier, is understanding the leader in you. So the responsibility is for you to lead. You're leading the plan. That's your starting point. Having clarity on the type of leader you are is the kind of service that Frontline offers through coaching. So that's something that you can understand through coaching. So that's number one. Number two, I've been there several times, and I've worked with someone who's sitting in the room where I can think of a direct experience that we've had. Get on the phone. Get on the phone, call them and say, this is my observation, this is what's happening with the young child, this is where I think we need to be going, can we have a conversation? And it maybe you have to put an hour aside, whatever you need to do, but sometimes having that one-to-one with that head teacher is necessary, because you've got to get them on the same page. The plan will not work. It just won't work. You can challenge them in meetings. I quite happily do that, not a problem for me. But often I will always bring it back to that one-to-one, because it's key. They understand what you're trying to communicate. They understand what you're trying to achieve. And when you've got those two elements at play, you should be able to pull everyone around the table to be on the same hymn sheet. The other element about your meetings is lead with your objectives. Be clear about what that meeting is for, the purpose of the meeting, state that at the beginning, make your position very, very clear. You can tell the kind of social worker I was, can't you? But make your position very clear as to what it is you're trying to achieve. Why are we all here? Let them, again, introduce themselves and say why they are part of this child's life. So you are constantly bringing them back to the point of why we're here, what we're doing, what's the progress. Keep them accountable, please. Please keep them accountable. If they say they're going to do X, Y, Y, that's your expectation. You're the leader of that plan. Bring them back to that point, and never leave out the family, of course. They're part of that plan as well. So when the family is saying, oh, the head teacher said this or done that, it's rare I will get involved in those elements, but sometimes it does help to be the mediator to try and bring everybody on the same page. So all of that to say, by any means necessary, lead them.
Do you know, can I just, on a different scale about leadership as well, after the care review was published, we went to this conference at the Houses of Parliament, and Anne Longfield stood on stage, and she used to be the Children's Commissioner, and she wrote a report on young people's lives. And there was all these other multi-agency CEOs and directors, and they're all talking about these ideologies about changing the system to protect young people. And somebody got up, it was actually a social worker who got up as well and said, can somebody just take this horse by the reins and lead it? Because we're here 20 years later, and everybody's coming up with these great ideas, but nobody's taking the lead. And it's saying when we bring it down to that level when you're in a room with school teachers, I'm in these kind of professionals meetings, and I sometimes say, hey, who's leading this? You know, this child is, you know, somebody's got to lead that. And that's, thank you for saying that, because I can take something away from what you've just said about that as well. It's really important, but, you know, you lead and you've got confidence to lead as well.
One more thing, and then I'll be quiet. I'm really sorry. One thing, just a little tip. Book your meetings in advance. So I would say if I've got a CP conference, nobody leaves until all the core groups are booked until the next conference is due. The reason for that is, A, it saves time. B, if you've got annual leave and sickness and things like that, they are ahead. They know where you are. And again, it shows your position as a leader. You are leading. We're doing this now. We're booking all these meetings in advance so everybody knows where we are and what we're doing. And I found that really helps keep people on track. And it saves a lot of time.
Hi everyone, my name is Yasin. First of all, I want to say thank you for everyone's experiences. That I've gained a lot of insight because I'm actually not a social worker, I'm a youth worker currently. And I'm also at university, so I'm a second year criminology student as well. I currently work in Small Heath and predominantly with the Somali community. So probably my question is aimed at Tyrone. I would say as a youth worker, obviously your experiences previously, now you've kind of grown and even gained more and going forwards. What kind of things would you say that as a youth worker for nowadays, like that you think is important for me to understand, like, or for important for me to like, kind of take on board or go forward, that you think is kind of necessary, maybe? It's a general question, but
yeah, to take on board for a youth worker today. It's always meeting the young people at where they are. So there's never, and I'm sure, I feel I can already clock your vibe, that you're never just going to do like a blanket for every young person. Everyone, you need to find a different mechanism for them, or a different like language, you know what I mean? Because young people look at youth workers, they really, really like lift them up. If that youth worker respects them, treats them with respect, talks to them in a way that's not like school ever, they really like respect youth workers, and probably above any other adult that they come into contact with. That's what I found, and I've watched it happen to other youth workers that I know as well, because there has to be the separation of home. Like, don't talk to me like my dad or my mum or my big brother. Like, that's not that. And there also has to be a huge like breakaway from school to let them know, although there are rules in the youth club, you can't go too far, but you can go a lot further than you can at school. Like, you shouldn't swear, but I'm going to let that one go. I might let like 17 go, but you know, like, you shouldn't be doing that. But I'm never going to raise my voice. I'm never going to do that. But also, there needs to be, there's a level where young people play with. So they go, oh, I'm going to push this boundary now. So there has to be a place where you go, before you get there, because I can see what you're doing tonight, before you get there, this is what's going to happen. And stand by that. Because, and I fumbled badly as a youth worker many times of going, this is going to happen. It never happened. The next thing, they're running amok, and no one respects me for a good 2 months. So wheeling it back in and going, listen, going forward, what we're going to do is you'll have to leave if you do that again. I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to shout. I'm not a parent to you. I'm just here to like chill with you, really. You know what I mean? I've created a space for you to be yourself. You want to vibe, we can talk about anything you want. But go too far, and this is what's going to happen. And then it happens, and then everyone else around goes, you know what? We still have to, because you're teaching them about society, really. We have to act in a certain way, or we can't take it too far. But also, as I was saying, like finding potential. If you can identify someone, you go, everyone's got their thing. You know, that you might think, actually, you're pretty good at that. You do a little research online. Find someone on Instagram that does this thing that you think that they could do. And go, you check this person out. This is what they do, this kind of thing. Or I remember youth work, Coventry. I was in Coventry one time. I was doing a project, and I was in this youth provision place called PYF. And I met this group of young men. And I'm here to do poetry, and every young man's, oh my God, poetry is so boring. So I walk in, and everyone wants to rap because they're young. Everyone wants to rap, I get it. But there was one boy, and I was like, you're not a rapper, you're a poet. And I just left him with it. I was like, I don't want to hear you rap, to be honest. Like, it's good, I'll entertain it, but you're truly a poet. And he was like, I'm not a poet, no, I'm not a poet, no, that's embarrassing. And I'm like, no, for real, trust me. Like, I showed him my work, and I showed him some work of other people, and I said, look, like, check that out. That's what you do. Pandemic comes along, I lose contact with him. He was 14 at the time. He's now 18. This guy's getting booked, performing like headlining poetry like events. I'm like, what's going? Wait a minute. I told you you're a poet. But he said, I like that example because he always says, it's to the point, I pay him to do work now with my company. Like, he's now doing the work that I do. So I'm like, when we speak, he always tells me that no one had ever looked at him in any way to tell him that you could do this. And it was, I didn't harbor on it. It was a quick, you're this, explore it. That's why be genuine. I truly believe this in you. You should explore that. And a young person who goes to school or in their own environment around their friends, they're never being uplifted for the most part. School is a shame-based place. So it's just put down. Around their friends, no one's like really gassing anyone up for anything truly like valuable. So when they see someone, an adult who has no stake, and they're not a parent, they're not trying to like make them pass an exam, it's just, I see you and I feel like you can do this thing. That really resonates with young people. It's like what Chris was saying about planting a seed. It just resonates. You don't have to go too hard on it. But that's what I think. I think identifying potentially young people, and so many young people are very anxious about everything as well. Being really good at seeing what makes young people anxious about certain things in life. Because I'm sure you've signposted young people to somewhere or told them to do this thing or explore this or think about it. No, I can't do that. Why? And they've always got a reason. I always visualize it. I always visualize their worries as if they're like plotted, sorry, Lisa, but they're like plotted around the human body. We go, okay, you might have like 7 worries. Well, let's talk about this. And it's very quick because a worry is not a real thing. So you just knock it down. And then what? Explore it with them. Okay, let's say that happens. And then what? Okay, you're scared about this. Then what happens? Nothing, really. They come to realize that they build up so much around themselves and you're just there to just be a soundboard for the most part. But be genuine, see potential in them, and treat them with respect. And that does wonders for them.
I really appreciate that advice. I really do. Thank you.
I'm going to add a little bit to that. Just a little bit of seasoning.
Yeah, a little bit of seasoning.
What I heard you say, coaching hat on now, what I heard you say was a young person needs to feel seen. And when anyone, let alone young people, when anyone feels seen, they can therefore see the potential in themselves. And as we plant the seed, as we say you're a poet, they can take that and actually run with it. So see them for who they are and communicate that to them. It makes a world of a difference when someone feels seen. It's something that they are looking for through Air Force Ones, through drill music, through connecting with others, whatever you want to call it. That's what they're trying to achieve. So when you actually, kind of go to the back end of that, the basics of that is sense of belonging, sense of identity, wanting to be seen and valued, and that's where the respect, etc., comes in. So you're probably doing all that already, but maybe just enhance that by communicating to them of what you see as their potential.